call to order the City of Brookings Council Workshop for August 10th at 5:49 p.m. Will you please call the roll?
Councilor Bond.
Here.
Councilor Pareda. No, excuse me.
You're good.
Mayor Pareda.
Here.
Councilor Mom.
Here.
We'll move on to our topic of discussion, the Mill Beach access hours.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council. At the July 27th meeting, we had several community members that made public comments speaking about adjusting the Mill Beach access hours due to loud noises, parking violations, and unattended campfires. There was a request to create a workshop for this matter, and that's what we have for you tonight. This has been discussed numerous times over the years. It was subject of review of the Council and the Parks and Rec Commission in 09, 14, 17, 19, 20, 24, 25, and now back in 26. And for the public's information, the road going down to the parking lot of Mill Beach was constructed in 2014. So in 2024, the state of Oregon banned camping on Mill Beach, which was brought forward by the residents of Macklin Cove. And now the focus of those there at the Cove and surrounding seems to be primarily on the hours of operation for the beach. And several of them expressed the desire to have the hours aligned with the rest of our parks. And go a little bit of information here, but in 2020, the Brookings City Council voted against changing the hours for Mill Beach Park because councilors wanted the residents and visitors to have the ability to build a campfire when it's dark outside during, of course, non-restricted burning days. So tonight, what I have before you real quickly is a little PowerPoint presentation, and it kind of gives you a little bit of history as to what happened and where we are, and just like to go over this real quickly, just give you guys the information I think is really important. You go to slide number 1 there, the calls for service. What I did was I had Donnie, and I'm sure you worked with Tracy, and they went and pulled the calls from the beginning of August of 25 to the beginning of August of 26. And any sort of calls for service for Mill Beach. We had 111 calls for service for Mill Beach. And as you can tell, we broke it down, just kind of giving you an idea of the percentages. We had about 10 different callers, and one caller represented about 89% of the calls, which is 99 out of the 111 calls from the same individual. Go to the next slide. The calls to Mill Beach, the time of day. Donnie and his crew were great in breaking it down for us so we'd know when the calls were coming in. About 38% of them were during the day from 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. From 9:30 to midnight, we had about 40% of the calls, and from midnight to 6:30, we had about 22% of the 111 total calls. Go to the next slide. The categories. And we broke down the top reasons for calls. Loud noise represented 54% of the calls. 60 out of the 111 calls were for loud noise. So I'm going to break that down a little bit more here. And then you had that followed up with parking violations, illegal camping, campfires. Then we had a few other, animal complaints, dogs barking, those type of things. But what I want to do is kind of break down like the top, 4 or 5 that we had as far as the complaints out there. The next slide shows the loud noise complaints. And as you can tell, the majority of them were for, out of the 60 calls, the majority of them were for loud music. We also had, calls because people were yelling and speaking loud. I think one call Tony was saying is they called and said there was a fight out there, and then when they got there, it was just a guy on his phone talking loudly. So they asked them to ratchet it down a little bit. We also had people that complained about dogs barking on the beach, And as we were talking, the UTL, we see that on there, that's unable to locate, and the GOA is gone upon arrival. So this is when they get there, and there's nobody there at that point. So the next one is parking violations. We had some calls, 13 calls for people calling in saying that there were inappropriate parking going on at the park, and the majority of these were illegally parked. But once the police arrived and explained to them that they were not allowed to park in certain zones, they hopped in their cars and moved, and they were taken care of rather quickly. And again, 23% of them, they weren't there when the officer arrived, or is that what falls under unable to locate? Is that typically, or is that
the unable to locate on that one? It would be probably that the officers were unable to locate the driver.
Oh, okay.
So they parked, went down to the beach. Officers couldn't find them. Depending on time of day, what officers will do is they'll get on their PA system and basically yell down the beach.
So more loud noises.
Right. That's why I said depending on time of day, right? You don't want to be doing that at midnight.
Right.
So in that case, that's going to be the drivers were on the beach somewhere. But in almost all of the CADs I read, I remember seeing that they came back and 30 minutes later the car was gone. So
yeah, so they got the message. So okay. The next slide is in regards to illegal camping. We had a total of 10 calls for that. 4 of those were for people who were resting in their car. 3 of the calls were for somebody sleeping behind the restroom, and 10% were not in any violation, and again, 20% unable to locate. And I did put a note down there, as we stated earlier, the camping issue has pretty much died out quite a bit down there, because now that since 2024, almost 2 years ago, the state banned camping in Brookings on beaches. So we don't have a whole lot of that going on Mill Beach. The Macklin Cove Condominium Association, they successfully petitioned the state to ban overnight beach camping. The Oregon Parks and Rec held several meetings, town hall meetings. We even talked among the council, and the council decided at that point to write a letter of support for that, for Mill Beach, because there were quite a few people that were upset about those camping in Mill Beach and the messes that they were leaving behind, and understandably so. So the next slide is talking about the campfires, illegal campfires. We had 9, or fireworks actually too. We had 9 total calls. Most of the calls, we had somebody from our fire department go down there and address these, and 45% of them were not in violation of the current fire ordinance, meaning that there was no bans at that particular point, and they were conducting themselves in a safe manner as far as the campfire on the beach. 44% of them extinguished the fires immediately, and then 11% we weren't able to locate at that particular time. But from what I was told, if they're unable to locate the individuals, the fire department will put the fire out. They're not just going to leave it unattended. So lastly, as far as the graphs go, this kind of shows you the calls for service for Mill Beach over the past 4 years. In the calendar year 2022, we had a total of 44 calls. 2023, we had 37 calls. 24, we had 31 calls. And in this last year, from August 1st of 25 to now, we've had 111 calls. So we have had a spike in calls. And so we recognize that. So saying that, I mean, Mill Beach is an established public coastal access point. The state of Oregon strongly protects public access to its ocean shores here in Brookings, and nearby residents are entitled to have reasonable protection from unlawful noises, camping, litter, disruptive behavior. And, and the public should not have to, put up with that during the existing hours in place. This last year, there were no citations or arrests made on Mill Beach by Brookings PD. The majority of these folks, once they were notified about, you need to turn the radio down, and the majority of those calls for loud noise were kids, playing their music loud, which, I never did as a high school kid. And we're told to please turn it down, and the majority of them, if not all of them, abided and turned it down. Also, we had a few people that were sleeping in their cars. Some of them were just taking a little cat nap, but we're told they couldn't camp there, and they understood that part as well. I talked to Tony and Donnie, and we talked about one possible solution is what we did, excuse me, down in Social Security Bar, which is install a better camera system that would allow our dispatchers to have a better view of what's going on down in Mill Beach. And if we put a speaker on the, Donnie said about, getting on the PA system to alert people, we could have the ability from where our dispatchers, if there are people playing their music loud or people that are doing things they shouldn't be doing or they're parked illegally, once the call comes in, they can express that to those that are down in the parking lot, and I think that'll correct some of those behaviors as well rather quickly. Rather than wait for a police officer to arrive, they'll just say, this is Brookings PD, we've had a call, you need to turn your music down, or whatever the case may be. Or if there's a scuffle going on, they're on their way, just letting you guys know. And as Donnie could probably attest, once they hear that, they leave pretty quickly. So I think a lot of those could be remedied by it. But I think if you talk amongst the staff, one of the big reasons why the council back in 2020 decided not to change the hours were because we have no other place for residents or visitors that are right here to build campfires. Something that I know a lot of people, look at, especially during, burn bans, and I feel strongly about it too. You shouldn't be doing things during a burn ban. However, this is the only beach accessible by our residents to where they could actually go down, bring the kids, bag of marshmallows, and have a little campfire out on the beach during the appropriate times, not during any sort of ban. And typically, the only way you can do that is after it's dark in the summertime. We know, some points during the summer, it doesn't get dark until almost 9 o'clock. So if we're shutting it, down 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after sunset, that's really not an appropriate amount of time for somebody to actually build a fire and then have to leave 30 minutes later. We did have somebody from the condo association that felt like that was a fair thing to do, but I kind of reiterated that, they're literally just be getting the fire started and then have to quickly, extinguish it. And I didn't think that was an appropriate amount of time. So, but of course, the final decision is made by this governing body. But I will tell you, I think for the most part, we understand why those some of the calls and some of the things why some of these folks were upset about some of the things going down in Mill Beach. But if you ask staff, especially in our police department, the things that are going on in Mill Beach right now versus what was going on there 10 years ago is quite different, because there's no camping allowed down there anymore. So we don't have a whole lot of transients down there as much as we did at one point. When we were going through the hearings with the State Parks and Rec, when they had all the photos and stuff, and some of them were from back in the day when that was an issue. So anyway, I just wanted to run this by council via a workshop and kind of get the feel. And I have Tony, who's over our Parks and Rec department, and I have, Lieutenant Dotson here as well, can answer any questions in regards to police activity down in Mill Beach. And so if you have any questions at this time for myself or these two gentlemen, now would be the time to do so.
Couple questions. Does Macklin Cove residents have their own private access to the beach?
No.
They don't have like a little
Oh, I don't think they
pathway
may.
or something?
There's a fence and a gate there. I don't know if they can walk out, on the other side of the condo complex and come down on the beach.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm looking, but sorry, I
It's not
sort of
that they don't-
misunderstood your question.
Yeah, no, I guess the reason why I'm asking is because it'd be really, I don't know, it just would seem pretty unfair for the city to block access to the rest of the people where the Macklin Cove people were able to access through their own private access. Like that would
They have
seem
access to
very
the
fair me.
beach. I mean, they do have access to the beach. I just don't think it's as convenient for them.
Right,
Because
right.
they're above, and that area at the beach levels, it's like a basement
Yeah,
foundation under the building, so there's
Right.
not really you can't walk out onto it, but if they were able to walk around behind their fence, they could get to the beach.
right. Yeah, because that's like the one thing that would kind of rub me the wrong way, if we're talking about limiting access to everybody else and then, private access was still allowed in some way. The other thing I was wondering about was the restroom.
Looks like there's a
Did we ever open up that restroom or get that operational? And
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did, and it
It's
was
been over a year now.
Yeah, it's been, we've had, with that restroom was closed for probably 4 years, just locked off, not
Right,
even
'cause
open.
people
And
were trashing it.
we had a significant amount of transient activity down there that it was weekly, the vandalism. But I would say since we have opened it in the last, we haven't had the kind of activity down there that we did before.
we somehow is that like a timed lock on?
No, it's just open.
Just open. And we haven't really had the same issues since okay.
Yeah, we haven't had the same issues.
We did get a question from one of the residents out there about installing the time locks out there, and Tony and I kind of went back and forth as to, the pros and cons of that. And I understand why they would want that, but Tony mentioned this is just something else that you could open up for potential vandalism and have to mess with as well. I mean, those lock systems, I mean, if somebody wanted to spend the night there, they could, if they knew what time the lock closed. I mean, they're not locked in for safety reasons. They have like a little plunger where they can hit it and get out if it's an automatically timed, because it's all magnetic. But we're just not seeing it. I mean, we've got a couple calls from some people sleeping behind the bathroom over there, but not actually like vandalizing the bathroom. So
The last person I had was for Lieutenant Dotson was, boy, it seems like one person's called 90 times or something like that. Is there any way to, I mean, there's got to be some repercussions you would think for somebody who's like continually abusing our 911 system for minor things like this. Is there any mechanism to,
No, and I don't think they're 911 calls. I didn't even really pay attention when I was reading. But yeah, clearly one person calls a lot.
yeah,
And I know in a couple instances they were talked to by the officers. Like,
Yeah.
this isn't how you reported it.
right. You guys have important things to do, and it's.
And I was actually pleasantly surprised at the response times to these calls, because I looked at 111 calls. How long did it take the officers to go there? And I'm sure you noticed too. They were there quickly in the vast majority of these calls. There were a couple, like one that jumped out at me was like a parking violation call where it took the officers, I think it was 19, 20 minutes to get there. But that's going to be pretty low priority compared to other calls that they're dealing with. So, but to answer your question, no, not really. If they were 911 calls, there are some state statutes in place to hold people accountable if they're knowingly making a false report. But it's difficult sometimes to prove what somebody knew versus what they thought. And then backing up real quick, I looked at an aerial photo. It does look like there's private access in between the two buildings that are the condos. It looks like they have a concrete, probably walkway.
I suspected that.
That's kind of what I gathered based on, so I watched through the meeting that I missed, listened to all the comments, read through what was provided, and it sounded to me, even based on that they do have a private access. I don't know what that looks like specifically, but thank you guys for putting this data together, because this is the exact data I came here tonight prepared to ask for. So now I don't have to ask because it's all here.
Yeah.
I do think that as far as the number of calls coming in, it validates the time that they're talking about. They're saying dark to midnight is when they want it closed, but I think this beach serves a specific purpose, and it was designed that way. I think we have for our youth, we have limited places for them to go and visit and things to do. I do empathize with the residents of this area. I think none of us, without living there, can have any kind of comprehension what it's like to have to live in an area where these kinds of things happen. And I take their frustrations and concerns seriously and to heart. But we also have, as council, the responsibility to weigh the desires and needs of the entire community, not just one area and neighborhood. And I think that's a very hard thing to balance sometimes, because I think there was, from their perspective, one respectful, reasonable answer, and that was to make the park hours the same. And I can understand the perspective of, if all the city parks have one set of hours, why is this one an exception? And I do believe there's a reasonable explanation, and that is to have proper, respectful use during certain hours to have an evening time campfire, which I think Seaside, Lincoln City, Newport, I've been to those beaches in the evening, and I've seen people having campfires, and there are residences close. However, I do also see that they had a few more options of things that we might do. Posting signs about excessive music and noise in the evening hours. I think that's an easy low-hanging fruit thing that we should be able to accomplish. I had some questions about the fire safety parking, and they're talking about being parked along the fence line in an area. Is that city property? Is that, what property is that?
So if you go down to the parking lot and you look to your right next to the restroom, there is a striped off area that says no parking, and it's in front of a fence that an emergency vehicle could get down if they were to fight a fire. They could open the gate up and go and drive down. So that's what they're referring to. But it's marked no parking.
It's marked no parking,
But
and
people
it's
park
city
there.
property.
Obviously, you could see the complaints in here for parking violations. You're going to get complaints.
Right.
People, when there's only a few parking spaces down there, and so people are, they want to be close, and so they'll park in the no parking zones, even if they think they're going to be there temporarily, which I would imagine somebody going down there to spend the day, they're not going to park in that spot. If they're going down there for a few minutes, that's probably where they're going to park. I don't know what the length of time is these vehicles sit in these locations, but my experience down there when we first built it, it was going on quite a bit, but they were never there for more than a couple hours at one time. And I don't even think they were there an hour, what I experienced at that time. So I'm just assuming that's what's going on now too.
Are those marked as fire zones, or
The fence has a sign on it that says it's a fire zone, yes.
Okay.
So,
Tony, you also mentioned to me earlier that originally, maybe into this day, Mill Beach, is it actually deemed a park, or is it just an access?
It's technically a right-of-way.
Just a right-of-way with a parking lot?
Yep.
Okay.
We received funding to do that project through Oregon Parks and Recreation, but I believe beach access points, which doesn't necessarily have to be a park, are eligible for grant funding. And that's how we were able to get this. And we used the small grant for this project. I think we got 65,000 for this project. So
So-
it was supported by them.
It's not technically a park, it's a parking lot for the state's park.
It's an-
But the parking lot belongs to the city.
That's right.
While the beach access belongs to the state. And I understand their concern of how
Yeah.
confusing that is. That's unfortunately the case often with multi-jurisdictional access points.
But I do think if we did install some similar cameras and had the ability to address these immediately, that would probably be a moot point now. So, because I think a lot of these folks would abide by it.
And I'd like to elaborate on that. We could obviously put in a very expensive camera system up there, but when you put a camera system up there, or you put locking devices for, these things have a cost to them. And I could tell you that we could spend between $2,000 and $5,000, probably $3,000 and $5,000 to upgrade the security system down there, have a bullhorn that you can access and yell at people. That all requires maintenance. Those are up on poles. You got to get equipment down there to get up there and clean them and fix them and change them out. And so that's that. There's that. And then just, is the need, really there? There's a balance there. Just like the fixing the doors so they lock. Actually, those types of doors on the inside, they're triggered by motion. So they'll release on motion. So you walk up to the door to go open it, it's going to release it. So if you're in there, somebody's going to sleep in there, the door's going to be unlocked all night because he's moving around. You might click locked every once in a while if he's not moving, or the person's not moving in there. So, a lock on the door, I don't know, is really going to solve our problem. Because once they get in there, they can stay in there. And the door's going to remain unlocked. They're moving around.
I would say the only thing that would kind of curb me the other direction is if we felt like, our police officers, they cost a lot too. And having to respond down there constantly is a big cost to the community as well. And I don't know if a few $1,000s for some kind of a system curbed that, I think that might be a worthwhile investment. I get the maintenance part of it, but there's a big cost to tying up our officers' time doing things like that, where maybe it'd be quicker, easier to do it another way. What I'm hearing is that we haven't had any citations or arrests in the last year. A significant drop off in the camping issues since the Oregon State Parks rules have become implemented. We've had rapid response times, and it's the only beach access within the city that allows for people to go down and have a campfire on the beach. So, yeah, I mean, it's those reasons. I don't see any need to make any major changes from my perspective.
I think the small low-hanging fruit things that we can do to help curb whatever is going on and to help alleviate some of the concerns, I think that's worth investing in. I don't think there is cost to it, but I don't think it's extensive. And certainly, I mean, the option of having a person down there full-time, like I wish we had the money to do that. I wish we had the money to hire more officers and more staff, and to not have our staff stretched so thin already. Unfortunately, that is not a reasonable option for our budget. And so while I understand the thought behind it, it's just not a lift that the city could make. But there are some lifts I think we could do to show at least the concerns are heard and we're trying to alleviate what we can. But I do think one of the things that I heard in the public comments was that there was a perception that the data was going to support their complaints and their concerns. And I think that what the picture paints is that one person is primarily calling to complain about this situation, and there are some frustrations, and it's mostly loud noise and mostly music. And I think whatever we can do to quiet that down, hopefully will help the situation overall.
So I'll say something. because I'm usually one of few words. I moved up here 14, 15 years ago, bought the house that is now behind Dollar General before Dollar General ever got there. My first night in that house, I had 3 homeless dudes in my driveway beating the crap out of each other. The point being is that it had nothing to do with the city. It had nothing to do with the citizens of Brookings. It had nothing to do with anything like that. I didn't do my due diligence when I bought my property in knowing that that was a problem in that area. It would have been a very simple thing to do or to figure out, but I just simply didn't do the research. Statistically speaking, thanks to what you provided me here, somebody did the same thing. They didn't do their due diligence. They obviously didn't look and see, hey, there's a parking lot sitting out in front of the condo I just bought. And now we have somebody that's making, what was it, 99 of the 111 calls? Okay, that's ridiculous. I can say that just because I've been in this position, but the city worked with me in regards to that issue, especially since Mayor Hodges and since you came to be and Donnie came over to the PD and all that good stuff. Things changed around here. And they were monitoring the homeless people, especially around my area. And that resolved a lot of them from camping behind the Dollar General and camping on my property and doing things like that. From what I see here, the enforcement's already there. This is just one person that's raising a lot of complaints. And the reason why I bring that up is statistically speaking, we have less and less calls and less calls. And if you take away the 99 calls from the 111, that means you had what, 20, no, not even, you had 12 calls during that time. So your patrolling of that area, your observation of that area has obviously improved the situation in that area, even if you take some of those calls as being valid. So I'm not seeing any dire need, statistically speaking, from what you provided, and trust me, this blew me away. There's no statistical reason to change anything, in my opinion. Somebody didn't do their due diligence, and now they're complaining about it. And I'm sorry, but that's where I see that it's at.
And I also wanted to point out when I was talking to Donnie about the research, out of the 111 calls for service, that doesn't count the ones where our guys are just patrolling down there and go down there as well. I don't know how many we had during that time, but it's quite a few.
Yeah.
I mean,
100.
yeah.
For officer initiated
Yes, yeah.
patrolling on the beach.
Patrolling.
Yep. So they know, we have issues, and they'll go down at certain times at night and drive down there. So that doesn't even count those. So we have a presence down there, and I do think because of the presence it has and the camping ban, I think it's taken care of itself. A lot of the issues have, especially when it comes to transit, building camps out there, and this definitely has curbed it quite a bit. So
I appreciate the comment, Councilor Bonin, pointing out that one caller and the number of calls and reducing that out, it looks like if you take that piece into account, the call load overall is really going down. So I do think that paints a picture.
Yeah, I appreciate you putting all this stuff together. I think, after hearing everyone's complaints and, just face value at the last meeting goes, yeah, why is it open longer than all the other parks? That seems like a simple fix, but I think with all the rest of this information together and having a full understanding that it's truly the only access point for people to be able to have a campfire out there with their kids or, enjoy the ocean at night, and makes sense to leave it the way it is, in my opinion.
And we will follow up and get some quotes on some cameras, and like you said, it's a small investment compared to absorbing the time where if somebody calls and a dispatcher can simply lean in, hit something on a quick bullhorn, and the people get in their car and leave, as opposed to sending an officer down there, dispatching an officer down there. I think that'll help relieve a lot of it. And that's all we had for you
Any
guys.
more discussion? Okay. Do we have council member requests for workshop topics? No?
Not at all.
Okay, then we will